Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wioya. Chapter 317. Fragments of Truth. Part 1. Crumble. Crumble. The walls of the residence building cracked, and even the roof tiles began to shatter. Ma Arahian's heart, standing on the roof tiles, pounded heavily. Despite the considerable distance, the waves of murderous intent spreading in all directions made one feel death even while alive. This was the first time he had seen a mere human's murderous intent cause such an uproar. Ba. I thought the owner's heart was filled with demons, but he wasn't just filled with them, he was a demon himself. The excommunicated monk Jia Jiamzhong, who had his arms crossed under the roof, chanted a Buddhist prayer for the first time in a long while, fiddling with his broken prayer beads. Magui. In Buddhist scriptures, demons themselves are referred to by various terms. One of them is Magui, also known as the demon army, the heavenly demon, and the demon of the Son of Heaven. Jia Jiamzhong, who had mastered the incomparable great power, could sense the energy of the great nature. Even the energy of the great nature is in turmoil. Everything that existed feared that murderous intent. Just how enraged must one be to emit this level of murderous intent? Jia Jiamzhong looked at Mok Jiangyun. His appearance, shrouded in the emanating demonic energy, was the embodiment of a demon. Roar. What the hell is he? Li Guang, held in the air by Mok Jiangyun's true energy, had an expression of fear for the first time in his life. Even when he first bowed to that person, he had never been this terrified. He was merely overwhelmed by the pressure, but now his heart was pounding so hard that it was difficult to even meet his eyes. Why? Why is he doing this? Despite his fear, Li Guang was perplexed. Why, of all people, was the one he was looking for that old man Mun now? As far as he knew, that old man had no blood relatives or anything, so he couldn't understand. So Li Guang barely suppressed this sense of terror and parted his lips. And for the first time in his life, he felt fear from this tremendous murderous intent and evil-stained nature. There must be some misunderstanding, swish. At that moment, Mok Jiangyun lightly raised his hand. Then he slightly tilted his hand to the right. Crack. As soon as he did that, Li Guang's right arm was forcibly raised and then torn off to the right. Arg. Even though his recently reattached arm was torn off again, the pain was beyond imagination. Blood gushed out like a fountain, and Li Guang gasped roughly. Thanks to the regenerative ability of the demonic energy, the torn part was quickly healing, but it was still agonizing to have a perfectly fine arm ripped off. Damn it. It hurts. It hurts so much. Ugh. It hurt even more than when it was cut off. He wanted to die rather than endure this. As he was suffering, Li Guang unconsciously raised his head and made eye contact with Mok Jiangyun. Just from meeting his eyes, at that moment. Swish 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 swish. He was engulfed in the illusion of his entire body being shredded by a sword. And it wasn't just for a moment. Like a piece of meat tied up in a slaughterhouse, he was unable to move an inch and was continuously and relentlessly slashed, and it felt like there was no end to it. It felt like it was going on for a whole day, no, even for several days. Slash. Slash. What the hell is this? Siap Chun, who had stepped back due to the murderous intent, couldn't hide his astonishment at the bizarre sight. Li Guang was convulsing, and his entire body was being slashed on its own, blood flowing down. It was so strange that it was eerie, without even feeling any sword energy. Huh. Then Li Guang roughly exhaled and arched his back, and black blood poured out of his mouth. As he spat out so much black blood that it was like vomiting, Li Guang's eyes shook like crazy. What was that just now? It felt like he had been slashed for days, but when he came to his senses, it was only a moment. He thought it was just an illusion, but his whole body was covered in blood, and even his internal organs seemed to be in a wretched state. Ugh. It hurt too much. It was so painful that he even thought he wanted to die. So Li Guang spoke as if pleading. Stop. Please, just stop. It would be troublesome if you're tired out by just this much. We're just getting started. Swish. This time, Mok Jayangan slightly tilted his hand to the left. Crack. As soon as he did that, Li Guang's left arm was raised and then pulled to the left, eventually being torn off. Arg. The blood vessels in Li Guang's white eyes burst, and his eyes turned red. He was even shedding bloody tears. It was more agonizing because his body was recovering due to the demonic energy inside him, making it difficult for him to die easily. Mok Jayangan knew this, so he was inflicting pain on him without using demonic energy or the energy of death. To him, who was suffering like that, Mok Jayangan said, "Why did you do it?" Ugh. What? I'm asking why you killed Munno. I. Stab. Ku. Mok Jayangan's hand pierced into his hesitating abdomen. Easily penetrating even the hard scales, Mok Jayangan grabbed his internal organs with his hand. Arg. It was already agonizing to have external wounds, but when he directly inflicted pain on his internal organs, Li Guang trembled his body as if he would faint at any moment. Even his only remaining lower garment was being stained by the fluid and blood oozing out. I have to die. As if he couldn't take it anymore, Li Guang made an extreme decision. Although he couldn't move his body, he could still circulate his internal energy, so he decided to induce death by making it go out of control. So he tried to raise his energy, but... Grip. Ugh. At that moment, Mok Jayangan's hand that had pierced his abdomen was now heading towards his danjian. As Mok Jayangan's hand touched his danjian, sizzle sizzle sizzle. The gathered internal energy scattered as if corroded by a strange energy. The scattered energy escaped his control and seeped out of his body through his skin like a haze. As the energy drained out, the scales on his skin gradually lost their color. Then the pain he had been feeling so far gradually doubled. Just moving the hand stuck in his abdomen a little made him want to die from the excruciating pain. Arg, please. Please just kill me. How could I do that? Kill me. Seeing him suffering, Mok Jayangan grinned with a smile so eerie that the corners of his mouth reached his ears. The moment he saw that, Li Guang felt like he would go crazy. This bastard was enjoying this situation. His pleas for death only continued to amuse this bastard. Even if he wanted to forcibly endure it, his will to do so had long been broken since the moment he was gripped by fear. Enduring it was out of the question in this situation. You don't have to answer my questions at all. Just keep suffering like that. This was sincere. Mok Jayangan intended to give him pain worse than hell, and he planned to sustain it, not just end it briefly. He hadn't been searching for him just to end it with a single instance. Then Li Guang mustered all his remaining strength to say something. What kind of relationship do you have with Munno, to do this, to me? Right. Yeah. You should know that. Mok Jayangan turned his head and smiled at Siap Chun, saying, Siap Chun, could you go over there for a moment? Yes, I understand. Whoosh. At Mok Jayangan's command, Siap Chun, who had been watching with a pale complexion, immediately launched his body towards the residence building. As he left, Mok Jayangan turned his head back and said, That's right. You should know the reason why you have to suffer. He's my grandfather. At those words, Li Guang's eyes widened. He doubted his own ears right now. Munno was his grandfather? What? What does that mean? It's exactly as you heard. Munno is my grandfather. That can't be? Munno has no blood relatives. Huh? The image of a burning house flashed through Li Guang's mind. He thought that crazy old man medicine immortal He Yang had noticed their approach and burned down the house to erase the traces of his living there and escape. But that wasn't the case. Burning down the house wasn't to erase the traces of him living there. It was to hide this bastard. To conceal the existence that was with him, he burned down the house. Wait. Then how did he know the demon sword technique of the first realm? Smack. Arg. At that moment, Mok Jian'an grabbed his intestines. Li Guang screamed in pain and suffered. To him, Mok Jian'an said, "There's no need to be so surprised that we're not blood-related. You seem to know something. Is that why you killed my grandfather? Please, just let go of this." Ugh. Does it hurt? Bear with it. You'll get used to it soon. What the hell was this crazy bastard saying about getting used to it while grabbing his internal organs? Was this bastard truly a demon? Li Guang's trembling eyes wavered. Evil? In Li Guang's trembling eyes, Mok Jian'an's appearance, exuding demonic energy, was the embodiment of a demon. Seeing that, Li Guang was dumbfounded. The prophecy that old woman holy fire priestess had made. The original text of that prophecy came to mind. Beware, for the incarnation of Ahriman, who will taint the sacred flame with black evil, shall appear in this world. That person had said that the prophecy would be about a being that doesn't exist in this world, an otherworldly being. It was a being different from spiritual creatures or demons and spirits, so it was an evil that had to be eliminated. In fact, everyone, including himself, naturally believed it to be an otherworldly being. But it seemed they had misunderstood. How could this be? To think they failed to recognize it even when it was so close to them. This monstrous talent who hadn't learned martial arts, was too late to learn it at the age of 17, and reached the level of a great sage in less than half a year. This was not something an ordinary human could achieve. Huh? Li Guang raised his head and stared intently at Mok Jian'an, Guardian Zhang of the Fire Faith Order. The existence that old man Munno, medicine immortal He Yang, had tried to hide with all his might. It was none other than it. It was you. What are you talking about now? You were the incarnation of Ahriman in the prophecy. Chapter 318. Fragments of Truth. Part 2. You were the incarnation of Ahriman in the prophecy. The incarnation of Ahriman? The moment Mok Jian'an heard those words from him, he recalled the passage from Persian that the leader of Shadow Clan Master, Huan Yaxian, had along with the scripture. It clearly stated, "Beware, for the incarnation of Ahriman shall appear in this world." Are you referring to that now? You? Li Guang's eyes widened at Mok Jian'an's words. How does this bastard know about that prophecy? Only a tiny minority within the organization were aware of it, and as far as he knew, only those at the level of bishop or above in the Fire Faith Order, including Holy Fire Priestess, were privy to this information. But this bastard wasn't from Fire Faith Order. What the hell is going on? Where did you hear that from, you bastard? In response to his question, Mok Jian'an scoffed and said, "You seem to be misunderstanding something." What? Only I get to ask the questions here. Swish. With those words, Mok Jian'an clenched his left fist and made a pulling motion. Instantly, the flesh on Li Guang's left thigh began tearing as if it would be ripped off at any moment. Quick. Crunch. Li Guang gritted his teeth, trying to endure it. However, even after experiencing the agony of having both arms torn off, this pain was still unbearable. Rip rip rip. Arg. A scream bordering on a howl erupted from Li Guang's mouth. His left leg had finally been ripped off. All that remained of him was his right leg, torso, and head. Li Guang, whose body was no longer fit for living, groaned in agony, drool mixed with blood dripping down his chin. Lifting his chin, Mok Jian'an said, "Shall we continue our conversation? Why did you call me the incarnation of Ahriman? I thought that was a prophecy and directive of Fire Faith Order." Kuo. Your answer is late. Then, to give you more motivation, the sacred flame shall be tainted by black evil. Beware the incarnation of Ahriman who will appear in this world. Taint the sacred flame with black evil? Mok Jian'an tilted his head in confusion. The prophecy was different from what he had seen. No, to be more precise, the passage he had seen only contained the latter part. Finding this strange, Mok Jian'an asked, Who did you hear those words from just now? At that question, Li Guang strained to turn his eyes and looked at someone. That someone was Holy Fire Priestess, who lay face down on the ground, unconscious and unmoving. Seeing this, Mok Jiangun's eyes narrowed. As expected, the Holy Fire Priestess was somehow connected to this organization. Although they were currently on hostile terms, they may have had a friendly relationship in the past. Ha, ha. Despite his life force surpassing that of a human due to demonic power, Li Guang's condition was not good, likely because a significant portion of the energy in his danjian had been dispersed and he had suffered severe blood loss. His complexion had turned a pale purple, and he looked as if he could die at any moment. Mok Jiangun placed his hand near the danjian on the abdomen he had pierced. SSSSSS. Herc. Li Guang's half-closed eyes snapped wide open. Thanks to the energy flowing in through Mok Jiangun's hand, he had regained consciousness. What in the world? Li Guang was baffled. The energy that had entered through Mok Jiangun's hand was not internal energy, but resembled the energy that had flowed from the black sword that had almost become one with him. This energy was demonic power. Mok Jiangun had injected a tiny portion of the unrefined demonic power he had received from the golden nine-tailed fox. Damn it. Li Guang inwardly cursed. If he had been left alone a bit longer, he might have naturally died, but thanks to the bastard injecting energy into him, the bleeding had stopped and he had regained consciousness. Even if I want to die, I can't. It was truly ironic. Who would have thought there would come a moment when the desire to die would surpass the will to live? Seeing him lamenting his return to consciousness, Mok Jiangun said, "It seems you're in a condition to live now. Then, let's continue our conversation. What is this incarnation of Ahriman? And why do you think it's me? Because if not you, then who else could be the incarnation of Ahriman? An interesting notion." Ha! Li Guang scoffed incredulously at Mok Jiangun's words. What he was talking about wasn't simply a matter of limits or willpower. Even if one had a different constitution from others or possessed innate martial talent, these were things difficult for a human to achieve. This bastard completely surpassed human standards. There was a reason that person referred to him as a being beyond human. You don't realize how dangerous you are. Dangerous. Grip. Mok Jiangun tightly clutched Li Guang's chin. Then, in a low voice, he said, "None of that matters. What's important is who you killed. You bastard. I heard that leaving a mark is a warning to the organization, so why did you kill him? It seems Ghostblade only warned my grandfather and left, so why did you go against that and kill him? Tremble. Tremble." With each word uttered, the murderous intent squeezing down made Li Guang feel as if his heart would burst. How could mere killing intent exude such overwhelming pressure and even make him feel threatened? If it were ordinary people and not him, they might have died from the killing intent alone, unable to endure it. No answer, I see. I don't mind if you keep your mouth shut all day. The longer you stay silent, the more time I have to torment you, a day, no, a month, even a year. A chilling smile lifted the corners of his mouth as he spoke. Seeing Mok Jiangun's face, Li Guang couldn't bear it anymore. This bastard's malice seemed like he would really do it. His resolve weakening, Li Guang pleaded. Please. Please just kill me. You want to die? Please. Begging now? You're really tugging at my heartstrings. Damn this guy. Contrary to his words, the murderous intent hadn't lessened one bit. While emitting such intense killing intent, he was still trying to torment him further, making Li Guang sick of it. Do you want to die a little more comfortably? Then tell me everything. Give me a convincing reason why I should kill you quickly. It would have been better if he had a mental restriction implanted in his head like the others. Even the deputy leaders of the Second Realm mostly had mental restrictions. But thanks to the merits of his predecessors, he was the only one without such a restriction, so he couldn't even induce his own death. As he hesitated, Mok Jiangun whispered. It seems you can still endure it. Then perhaps it wouldn't be bad to experience how it feels to have your internal organs sliced one by one. Swish. Mok Jiangun gently unleashed his aura through the hand embedded in Li Guang's abdomen. SSSSSHT. Kirk. As the sharp energy spread to his internal organs, Li Guang's expression contorted in agony. It was a completely different sensation from having his guts grabbed. Quack. It felt as if hundreds of shattered blades were slicing and stabbing each and every organ, so painful that he vomited and tears streamed down his face. What a nice look. Since you're enduring well, let's take it further. Mok Jiangun tried to intensify his aura. Li Guang's eyes shook like a madman. He had tried to stubbornly endure it out of loyalty to that person, but his resolve crumbled. Li Guang hastily cried out. It wasn't really me who killed Munno. At that outburst, Mok Jiangun, who was about to increase the intensity of his aura, paused and looked at Li Guang's face. Li Guang's eyes, glistening with tears of blood from the pain, showed no wavering. Mok Jiangun made an expression of incomprehension. What are you saying now? Clearly, I merely contributed to Munno's demise. Merely contributed? In response to Mok Jiangun's question, Li Guang began to speak, his eyes lost in reminiscence. What? What do you mean by that? Exactly as I said. If the First Realm Ghost Blade returns empty-handed after encountering Medicine Immortal He Yang, you, Li Guang, shall discreetly take over the mission. Why is that? Ghost Blade prioritizes his agreement with the Heaven and Earth Society leader over that person's orders. If that's the case, rather than Ghost Blade. No. Ghost Blade will carry out the mission. Then, the Heaven and Earth Society leader. No, my apologies. Li Guang shook his head resolutely. The Heaven and Earth Society leader was not someone he could do anything about. Even that person was merely observing without action. Rather than indulging in pointless pride, he should simply follow the given orders and protect the Heaven and Earth Society leader's safety. Smoke? Sensing something off about the smoke rising from the middle of the mountain, Li Guang hurriedly headed in that direction. He had been waiting and watching from afar for Ghost Blade to completely withdraw. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He spotted Ghost Blade urgently heading somewhere using his internal skills. It seemed more like he was chasing something rather than fleeing. What's going on? Though puzzled, this was his chance either way. Had Ghost Blade managed to find out something or capture him? Or had he acted as they feared? Upon arriving, Li Guang discovered a burning house and an old man barely standing in a vegetable garden not far away, swaying unsteadily. It was none other than Medicine Immortal He Yang, Munno. As feared. As expected, Ghost Blade had neither captured nor killed Munno. What was he scheming? As he pondered this, Li Guang furrowed his brow. Judging by the traces of multiple confrontations around Munno, he had assumed Ghost Blade had fought him, but something was odd. If he had faced off against Ghost Blade, a master of the sword, there should have been sword marks left behind, but there were no such traces, only remnants of palm techniques and poison arts. Finding this strange, Li Guang approached Munno, who was barely keeping himself upright. Munno seemed to be in a terrible state, likely due to severe injuries. Guardian Zhang. No, Munno. Li Guang? Spotting him, Munno couldn't hide his surprise. It seemed he hadn't anticipated a follow-up team being sent in addition to Ghost Blade. Li Guang drew closer and spoke. I thought you had fought Ghost Blade, but looking around, it seems you fought someone else. Is that so? There were no sword marks anywhere, no matter how he looked at it. If not Ghost Blade, then who had Munno fought here? As he puzzled over this, Munno uttered incomprehensible words. If you don't want to be infected with the formless poison, it's best not to come close. Formless poison? Chapter 319. Fragments of Truth. Part 3. If you don't want to be infected with the formless poison, it's best not to come close. Formless poison? At Medicine Immortal He Yang Munno's warning, Li Guang stopped in his tracks. Even those unfamiliar with poisons have likely heard of one notorious poison at least once. That was none other than the formless poison. The formless poison, as the name suggests, is a poison without form, colorless, odorless, and tasteless, making it impossible to detect any distinguishing features, thus earning it the title of the king of poisons. The more potent a poison, the fewer characteristics it possesses, so one may not even realize they have been poisoned until it's too late, and the formless poison is the pinnacle of such poisons. Formless poison? What do you mean by that? Li Guang asked, puzzled. After all, the only one known as the formless poison throughout the Central Plains was the Emperor's primal poison, also called the ultimate poison, of the Sichuan Tang clan. The Emperor's primal poison was created by Tang Hyang I, the patriarch considered as the founder of the Tang clan. As the king of poisons who had reached the realm of the 10,000 poisons body, his poison crafting techniques were unparalleled and innate. On his deathbed, he had condensed all the poison energy he had accumulated throughout his life to create this emperor's primal poison. This poison, called perfection itself, was a legendary poison that even the Tang clan's generations of poison masters could not analyze or recreate, no matter how hard they tried. Nowadays, only a tiny amount of this poison remains, and the people of the Central Plains refer to it as the formless poison. Due to its extremely dangerous nature, it has been designated as an absolute taboo through the righteous sect's Great Assembly. Surely you're not talking about the formless poison you know? Cough, cough. Is there any other formless poison? What is this nonsense? Then does that mean medicine immortal He Yang Munno has been poisoned by the formless poison? In a brief moment, several assumptions formed in Li Guang's mind. However, among those assumptions, one that was particularly incomprehensible was that Ghost Blade couldn't possibly use poison techniques. That can't be. Ghost Blade takes immense pride in his own swordsmanship. Thus, he would never use any weapon or martial art other than his sword. Li Guang's gaze turned to the traces around him. He had found it strange that there were no sword marks at all. This meant he didn't fight Ghost Blade. These were traces of a fight with someone else. Then why did Ghost Blade hurriedly leave this place? Unusually for him, he had rushed away without even surveying his surroundings, as if being chased. No, that's not it. He wasn't being chased, but trying to chase someone? That's right. That's it. Ghost Blade had hastened as if pursuing someone's tracks. The one he was chasing was none other than the person who had gravely injured medicine immortal He Yang Munno to the point where he could barely stand. Having confirmed all the circumstances, Li Guang spoke as if finding it ironic. Munno. Who exactly did you fight? Despite his question, medicine immortal He Yang Munno gave no answer. Instead, he was silently regulating his breathing. With each exhale, beads of sweat trickled down, and faint wisps of haze rose above his shoulders. Huff, huff. Cough, cough. He looked to be in immense difficulty. The Munno known to the world, along with medicine King Hua Tua, was said to possess the greatest medicinal knowledge and medical expertise of the era, earning him the title of medicine immortal. However, his hidden side was that of a supreme master who had reached a level of poison arts on par with the renowned poison clans, the Tang clan, the Guyang clan, and the Baek clan. His prowess was such that he had even defeated the First Realm's Ghost Blade in the past. Who could have appeared and defeated him? SSSSSS. The haze escaping from his body. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed to be dispelling the poison energy. Two names came to Li Guang's mind. Guyang Sao, the clan leader of the Guyang clan who had reached the pinnacle of poison arts, known as the 8 Poison Snake Staff, and Tang In-He, the clan leader of the Sichuan Tang clan, one of the 7 great clans, known as the 1,000 Poison Hand. If that really is the formless poison, then the one who fought him was a master of the Sichuan Tang clan. And that person even had the authority to boldly use the formless poison, which the righteous martial world had designated as an absolute taboo. In the Sichuan Tang clan, the one capable of such a thing was the 1,000 Poison Hand? Li Guang couldn't help but feel doubtful. Although he couldn't be certain it was definitely him, the probability of it being Tang In-He, the 1,000 Poison Hand, was currently the highest. But why did Tang and He come all the way here to confront Munno? No, it was hard to even consider it a confrontation. From the moment he used the formless poison, it was clear he had desperately tried to kill his opponent. However, it didn't make sense. Why? The Sichuan Tang clan has no reason to hold a grudge against Munno. No matter how much he thought about it, that was the case. Munno's identity known to the world was that of a medicine immortal who was highly respected by all. Unless his hidden identity was revealed. Ah. Li Guang spoke as if he finally understood. The Sichuan Tang clan found out that you are a member of the Fire Faith Order? Otherwise, there would be no reason for them to come and kill him while he was in seclusion. Despite his confident question, Munno remained silent, spending time dispelling the poison and recovering. At this, swish! Li Guang drew the black sword he had sheathed at his waist. Since he kept avoiding conversation, it seemed he had no choice but to resort to force. However, if he was truly poisoned by the formless poison, approaching him closely should be avoided. Even though he could control his true energy as if breathing after surpassing the barrier, he had to be cautious of the formless poison, known as the King of Poisons, as it followed a different path. Whoa! Unleashing his sword energy, Li Guang aimed it at Munno and spoke, "If you continue to keep your mouth shut about what happened, I won't ask any further. However, I must know where you hid that thing from the prophecy. In your current state, unable to even properly dispel the poison, I can easily kill you with mere sword techniques. So speak." Li Guang threatened him, urging him to talk. Then, Munno, who had been silently focusing on circulating his energy, opened his mouth. "Ha, ha. You people know nothing. What nonsense are you spouting? Do you think I can't kill you? The order has already been given to end your life if it comes to this. That's not important. Cough, cough. But you people must know the truth. You're not making any sense. If you continue like this, the prophecy was wrong." Li Guang, who was about to take action, paused for a moment. What is this old man saying now? The prophecy was wrong? He had already found it strange when he heard the news that Munno had suddenly disappeared with that thing from the prophecy 17 years ago. What are you talking about? Does this old man know something about the prophecy? If that's the case, he needed to hear him out first. Munno. If you want to survive, speak clearly. The sacred flame shall be tainted by black evil. Beware the incarnation of Ahriman who will appear in this world. That's right. That prophecy. The moment the holy fire priestess made that prophecy and medicine immortal He Young Munno betrayed them and fled 17 years ago, the relationship between the organization and Fire Faith Order had reached a catastrophic point. As a guardian, you were right by her side when she made that prophecy, so why did you do such a thing? Your brothers and sisters paid the price for the sin you committed. That was not my sin. Ha, ha. Her interpretation lost its direction. Direction? What does he mean by her interpretation losing direction? Is he referring to the holy fire priestess? As he pondered this, Munno continued. That is not an incarnation to be wary of, as she interpreted it. What nonsense are you? Cough, cough. The coins of the western regions have different patterns on the front and back, but whichever side you look at, it is ultimately one. Li Guang clicked his tongue. He couldn't comprehend what Munno was saying at all. Had he gone mad while living in seclusion all this time? Saying that the incarnation of evil should not be feared? Is this why? Perhaps this old man Munno had gone insane and become tainted by the incarnation of evil. He may have been so deeply immersed in evil that he turned his back on everyone and fled. The order from above to eliminate medicine immortal Munno if he didn't reveal anything seemed to be because of this. Either way, it seemed unlikely to extract any information from him in this state. You old man seems to have gone completely mad, tainted by evil, but I'll give you a chance for old time's sake. That thing from the prophecy, no, where did you take the incarnation of Ahriman? Even if it's not you, once we capture that old woman holy fire priestess, we'll find out soon enough. At his words, Munno chuckled. You're laughing? She has lost her qualification. What are you saying? What my words mean? Cough, cough. Your great master knows even better. The moment the word master was mentioned, Li Guang's eyes changed. To him, that person was his lord, whom his clan had served for generations, and a being to be worshipped like a god. How dare he bring up that person? Are you, the sinner who stole the incarnation, trying to blaspheme against that person now? It's truly regrettable. Mok Gan, that man, is the one who blinded her eyes and caused all this. Shut up. Swish swish swish. Before Munno could even finish his sentence. Unable to contain his anger, Li Guang unleashed a barrage of his most powerful bullet sword techniques along with a shout. Whoosh! Although Munno couldn't control his body due to the formless poison, he tried to move to avoid the attack. However, it seemed his body was already too damaged to move as he wanted. Swish swish swish. The first bullet sword technique he had launched sliced through Munno's waist as he leaped up, and the following technique shredded his falling lower body into pieces. Thud thud thud. Amidst the severed chunks of flesh that were once his lower body, Munno fell. Thump. With only his upper body remaining and his organs spilling out, his appearance was utterly gruesome. Although it was already difficult to survive in this state, Li Guang's fury had not subsided, and he attempted to launch another sword technique at the fallen Munno to finish him off. You brought this upon yourself, old. It was at that very moment. Flinch. What? A tremendous energy was felt, sending a chill down his spine. It was an energy that could instantly put even someone like him, who had surpassed the barrier, on guard, forcing him to halt his attack. Has Ghostblade returned? If that's the case, he needs to leave quickly. He had to carry out the task discreetly, without Ghostblade's knowledge. In any case, now that Munno, that old man, had been poisoned by the formless poison and lost his lower body, he would definitely not survive. With this in mind, Li Guang didn't hesitate and launched himself in the opposite direction. I did contribute to Munno's demise in the end, but he was going to die from the formless poison anyway. Squish. Squish. Crunch. As Li Guang was recounting the events as if reminiscing, he couldn't continue his words. The reason was that the air was becoming so heavy with each word he spoke that it was difficult to breathe. But that wasn't the end of it. The ground around him trembled violently and then cracked, and even. Whoosh! The pouring rain was flowing in reverse. The rain flowing backward turned into water vapor as it evaporated, creating an extremely bizarre sight. Li Guang couldn't bring himself to look at Mok Jiangun's face. He had willingly confessed the events of that day in order to seek his own death, but this had brought about an outcome far worse than he had hoped for. I can't breathe. It was as if the area around him and the bastard had become a vacuum. Just how intense must the killing intent be to materialize to this extent? Irk. As he retched up blood from the agony, Mok Jiangun's voice reached his ears. This wasn't a matter to be settled with just you. What? This bastard's way of speaking suddenly changed. With just a change in his manner of speech, the atmosphere had inexplicably shifted, and as Li Guang raised his head in bewilderment, he saw that Mok Jiangun's eyes had turned as black as obsidian. Chapter 320. Fragments of Truth. Part 4. It was an occurrence brought about by an accumulation of killing intent. Mok Jiangun had possessed a strong killing intent since childhood, to the point where it could be considered a murderous nature. Due to the intensity of this killing intent, his grandfather had advised him to refrain from meeting others. However, this wasn't the case throughout his entire childhood. Mok Jiangun had learned to control this innate killing intent through acquired means. His grandfather had taught him to always imagine his state of mind as a tranquil lake, never allowing it to be stirred by turbulence. He had also instilled in him a sense of propriety, ensuring it permeated his daily life. This had a significant effect. As Mok Jiangun deeply respected the grandfather who had raised him, he eventually reached a point where he unconsciously adhered to those teachings. However, snap. When his rage reached its peak and his unleashed killing intent became uncontrollable, something snapped within Mok Jiangun's mind, no, his heart. It wasn't simply crossing a line deep within his heart. It was as if something he had suppressed was erupting, and at some point, it began to take over his mind and everything else. Those eyes, what the hell? Li Guang couldn't hide his bewilderment at Mok Jiangun's eyes, which had turned as black as obsidian. Just meeting his gaze was enough to overwhelm him with an imposing aura, leaving his mind in a daze. Then, Mok Jiangun scoffed and spoke. Thanks to you, I've awakened after a long time, but this situation is troublesome. What? I haven't completely assimilated yet. What are you talking about? Humans are imperfect beings, but they find their path within that imperfection. That's why I held high expectations for their potential and wanted to harmonize with you all. But it seems you often disappoint me, perhaps because you're always faced with a crossroads of binary choices. Li Guang's eyes trembled violently. The confidence and majesty filling his voice made it seem as if he was looking at an emperor. This imposing aura could be described as domination, no, the presence of an absolute being. The moment he felt it, only one thing came to Li Guang's mind. The sacred flame shall be tainted by black evil. Beware the incarnation of Ahriman who will appear in this world. Ahriman? Li Guang spoke in a trembling voice, looking at Mok Jiangun. At those words, Mok Jiangun raised an eyebrow and spoke, Ahriman? Yes, I was called that as well. It was unbelievable. He had thought it was simply a prophecy signifying the birth of a great murderous being who would throw the world into chaos. This monstrous bastard was undoubtedly that incarnation. But... incarnation? Is this an incarnation? Can this even be called an incarnation? No. This is the real thing. Ahriman. As Li Guang became overcome with emotion, Mok Jiangun chuckled and said, whether you call me Ahriman, Tianzi, a devil, or anything else, it doesn't matter. Humans are beings that fixate only on the aspects they want to see anyway. However, swish. As Mok Jiangun extended his hand, Li Guang's body, with only one leg remaining, began to tremble violently. Under the influx of black energy, his body not only shook but also swelled as if it would burst. You were prepared for the consequences when you killed him, weren't you? Kuu. It was too agonizing. It felt as if every drop of blood was suffering. It was a pain he had never experienced before, making him feel like he would die, unable to endure it. Stop. Mok Jiangun whispered to the anguished Li Guang, with this level of power, I can not only shred your physical body but also your soul, annihilating it completely. A soul? What do you think it means for a soul to vanish? What? It means your very existence will be erased, regardless of reincarnation or anything else. Shudder. Amidst the pain, Li Guang was gripped by a fear that made him suddenly alert. Do you want to at least keep your soul intact? Then tell me. Where is the one who ordered you to kill him? No. That person, Kuu. Crack, crack, crack. As he spoke, cracks began to appear on his swollen body. As the cracks formed, the sensation wasn't pain but a gradual loss of all feeling. It was as if nothing existed. Seeing this, Mok Jiangun grinned eerily and said, what should I do? It seems best to hurry. Your soul is already being torn apart. It was truly bizarre. He was someone who had stubbornly clung to his loyalty to that person, even prepared to face death. However, when the being before him said his soul would be erased and his existence would vanish, he was overcome with extreme fear and found himself speaking without realizing it. Ghost Blade, only the deputy leaders of the First Realm can directly contact that person. How can I meet this human called Ghost Blade? Ghost Blade, Kuu. The time is approaching. Ghost Blade will definitely appear if the Heaven and Earth Society leader summons him. Please spare me. I don't want my existence to disappear. Alright. I'll do that. Really? At Mok Jianyun's words, Li Guang's face lit up despite his agony. Having experienced all sorts of bizarre things while serving that person, he believed in the existence of the soul and reincarnation. Thus, he wanted to avoid having his existence erased at all costs. To him, Mok Jianyun smiled and said, "But while I may do that, the right doesn't want it." "What? We're still separate entities, you see." Hey, that's different from what you promised." "What are you talking about, Irk?" Crack, crack, crack. Li Guang's swollen body crumbled into pieces, scattering like ashes. The only part that remained was his head, but even that cracked and crumbled. The shattered dust seeped into the rainwater pooled on the ground, fading away as if it had never existed in the first place. Looking down at this with an indifferent gaze, Mok Jianyun spoke, "If you're awake, get up on your own, old woman." Flinch. At those words, the holy fire priestess, who had been lying face down a short distance away, trembled. Although she had fainted during Li Guang's torture, she had woken up midway and heard their entire conversation. "Ahriman," he said? "How could this happen?" She couldn't hide her shock. Something that should never have happened had occurred. That prophecy was originally. Whoosh! Hook! At that moment, Holy Fire Priestess's body rose from the ground. Her body, now upright, directly faced Mok Jianyun. Seeing the black energy flowing from his entire body and his obsidian-like eyes, she was so shaken that she lost her words. As she stood there, shocked and at a loss, Mok Jianyun spoke, "Although you have already strayed from my path, you sure made good use of the mission given to you. How does it feel to have lost the price you paid?" At that question, the Holy Fire Priestess's eyes widened as if they would burst. Others might not understand if they heard it, but she knew what those words meant. "Why you are. This is me, and that is also me. You know that well, old woman. Saying you have already paid the price cannot undo everything. I am not one to forgive." Thud. The moment he finished speaking, the Holy Fire Priestess fell to her knees and prostrated herself on the ground. Then, she cried out in a pleading voice to Mok Jianyun, "If you say you will punish my sins, I will gladly accept it. But I had no choice. I couldn't lose what I had left. My one and only, Irk." She clutched her chest, unable to finish her sentence. Her heart was beating so violently that it felt like needles were stabbing it. It was so painful that even breathing was difficult. As Mok Jianyun made a gesture of clenching something with his hand, blood spurted from her mouth. "Pooh." Coughing up blood, she gasped in agony. "Pooh. I don't give a damn about your pathetic circumstances. Pooh, please. Because of your foolishness, the right lost something that shouldn't have been lost, and I too had to experience the same pain as back then. Spare. Your words are meaningless. I am no longer a merciful being. So I will erase everything related to the seeds you sowed and that being to whom you wagged your crafty tongue." Crack. It was at that moment. Something shattered within Mok Jianyun's chest, and something revealed itself. It was none other than Changrayong. Huh? Holy Fire Priestess's eyes, which had been gasping for breath due to the pain in her heart, trembled. The pain had suddenly ceased. Could it be that he was showing mercy? As she raised her head in confusion, she saw Mok Jianyun staring into empty space, as if looking at nothing. Why was he acting like that? "You mortal, no, what the hell are you?" Changrayong, who had forcibly broken free from the wooden puppet's seal, parted her lips as she gazed at Mok Jianyun, whose eyes had turned as black as obsidian. At her question, the obsidian-like eyes took on a strange look. Changrayong's eyes wavered as she watched this. Those eyes. It was the moment she approached him, about to say something. SSSSSS. Mok Jianyun's eyes, which had been like obsidian, returned to normal. Then, as if experiencing an extreme headache, he clutched his head with one hand and staggered, his expression contorting. Seeing this, Changrayong furrowed her brow and spoke, "What are you doing now? Are you all right?" At that question, Mok Jianyun slowly raised his head. As his eyes and expression returned to their usual state, she couldn't hide her bewilderment. Just a moment ago, Mok Jae-eun had definitely become a completely different being. He couldn't even hear her voice from inside the wooden puppet. That's why she had finally intervened, but what the hell was going on? She asked. Is it really you, mortal? At her question, Mok Jae-eun silently nodded. Do you remember what just happened? At that question, Mok Jae-eun held his forehead. Then, with an expression of incomprehension, he communicated via voice transmission, it's strange. What? I clearly had consciousness and memory, but I spoke and moved against my will. You remember? Yes. He remembered clearly. He was aware of what he had said and the situation he was in. He even felt the emotions and feelings with which he had spoken those words. Yet all of this was unrelated to his own will. It felt as if another being within him had shared a single body and carried out everything. What the hell is this? For the first time, Mok Jae-eun had questions about himself. There was definitely another being within him that he hadn't been aware of. But this feeling wasn't uncomfortable or foreign. It felt so natural, as if they had been one from the beginning, making it incomprehensible to him. Then, Mok Jae-eun looked at Chung Ryong. What kind of feeling was that? Although it had been unrelated to his will, since the emotions and feelings of that moment had been fully shared, it was difficult to forget the last part. It was close to an indescribable sense of nostalgia. Chapter 321. Fragments of Truth. Part 5. Mok Jae-eun had felt this emotion before. Whenever he thought of his grandfather, he would miss him. Naturally, a sense of wistfulness was mixed into that feeling of longing. What could it be? Mok Jae-eun had strong doubts about the emotions held by this being that existed independently of his will. He didn't know how long this being had been inside him, but the feeling of wistfulness similarly arose from longing. Chung Ryan was a spirit who had died long ago, so why did he feel such an emotion toward her? He was only just turning 18 years old. So how could he feel that way about Chung Ryan? Could it be? A thought occurred to Mok Jae-eun. Could it be that a high-level spirit was possessing his body? If it could seize control of his body when he was unconscious, it might be a spirit so powerful that even Chung Ryan couldn't handle it. However, according to Chung Ryan, once one surpassed the barrier, both the mind and soul would become stronger, making possession by spirits nearly impossible. Was that true? The more Mok Jae-eun thought about it, the more complicated his mind became. Then, mortal. Chung Ryan approached Mok Jae-eun and spoke. Yes? That being inside you. It doesn't seem to be simply a matter of personality. What do you mean by personality? Have you ever heard of the term split personality? No. It was the first time he had heard of it. In the past, there was a peculiar individual among the executives of the Heaven and Earth Society. Two different personalities existed within one person. Of course, it wasn't a case of possession or anything like that. But what was strange was that both personalities had completely different ways of speaking, behavior, and traits. So it was called a split personality because there were two personalities? Yes. But in your case, it seems quite different. You said things that were completely incomprehensible as if you had become a divine being. Calling it a split personality doesn't seem to capture the vast difference in the range of experiences. Could there be a possibility of possession? Possession? Absolutely not. No matter how high-level a spirit is, it's impossible for them to seize your body. From the moment you surpassed the barrier, not only your body but also your soul became stronger. Then what could this thing inside me be? At Mok Jae-eun's question, Chung Ryong's eyes took on a strange look. Those eyes as black as obsidian. The moment she saw those eyes, she was confused. It was because a very old memory faintly came to mind. However, since that memory was from the fleeting moment right before her death, it was hazy like a dream rather than clear. In that hazy memory, she saw him roaring. While everyone was afraid and terrified of his roaring appearance, to her, that sight was more sorrowful than angry. But why did that vague and inaccurate memory come to mind the moment she saw Mok Jaeongun's obsidian-like eyes? Chang Ryong? Mok Jaeongun called out to her. At Mok Jaeongun's expression, which seemed to be asking her to tell him if she knew anything, Chang Ryong suddenly became sulky. Why was she suddenly feeling upset with this guy? She snapped at him. I don't know. Do you think there's nothing in this world that I, the Venerable One, don't know? With those words, Chang Ryong suddenly flew far away. Watching her, Mok Jaeongun shrugged his shoulders and muttered. Well, that's true. Anyway. Swish. Mok Jaeongun lightly stretched out his left hand. Then, Holy Fire Priestess's body, which had been strenuously moving about 20 steps away in the direction Mok Jaeongun had pointed, stiffened as if caught by something. Hook. Where are you going? At that question, a chill ran down the Holy Fire Priestess's spine. She didn't know why, but Mok Jaeongun's demeanor had returned to normal, and he was staring at the empty space in front of her like a madman, behaving strangely, so she had attempted to flee. From the beginning, there was no hope that she could actually escape. She had not learned martial arts, and her body was elderly, so she had moved with the desperate mindset of grasping at straws. I was just... Swish. Eek. As Mok Jaeongun made a pulling motion, the Holy Fire Priestess's body rose and was forcibly pulled forward. With no martial arts training, she had no strength to resist this. Having been pulled right in front of him and forced to kneel, the Holy Fire Priestess trembled in fear. To her, Mok Jaeongun smiled and said, You have a lot to feel guilty about, so you're trying to run away, right? And no, that's not it. Don't deny it. What kind of mess did you create with that prophecy? What? The Holy Fire Priestess made a puzzled expression. Just moments ago, when Mok Jaeongun's eyes had turned black like obsidian and he had displayed an absolute demeanor, he spoke as if he knew everything. But looking at his attitude now, it seemed like he knew nothing. What's going on? Come to think of it, the atmosphere had changed as well. When his eyes were black, he exuded majesty and resembled an absolute ruler, but now, there was a contradictory brutality and madness hidden within his usual politeness. The Holy Fire Priestess was bewildered by this. Is he the incarnation rather than the being itself? If he were the being itself from the beginning, there would be no reason for him to show such completely different aspects. Rather, it could be because he was an incarnation that he displayed an imperfect appearance. In that case, could this be the only chance to save her life? Observing his reaction, she cautiously opened her mouth. Listen. Swish. Thud. The Holy Fire Priestess's face contorted in pain. Her left ear had been cut off and fallen to the ground. Although she didn't scream, she clutched her bleeding ear and writhed in agony. Mok Jaeongun spoke to her in a dry voice, Cut the nonsense and answer what I'm asking. At those words, Holy Fire Priestess raised her reddened face, gritted her teeth, and said, Uff. You can't kill me, young man. I can't kill you? If you kill me, it will be troublesome for you, who needs to take me to the Heaven and Earth Society leader, as well searching for the sacred orb. It wasn't yet certain whether Mok Jaeongun was a supreme being or an incarnation. However, she also had her own insight. Judging from his conversation with Li Guang and the situation so far, Mok Jaeongun needed her, if only for his relationship with the Heaven and Earth Society leader. She had to make that clear to protect herself from him. But it was at that very moment. Swish. Splash. Something with a different weight than before fell into the puddle of rainwater. It was none other than Aya. Holy Fire Priestess let out a scream that sounded like a wail. She had endured the numerous tortures in the underground prison with strong perseverance. However, the torture and interrogation in the Imperial Palace could be said to have been carried out at a lower intensity, taking into account that she, an elderly woman, could potentially die. Of course, that didn't mean it was very mild. At the very least, whipping and beating on the back were basic, and there were levels of piercing with needles and pulling out fingernails. But having an intact arm severed was a pain of a different dimension. It was beyond what she could endure. Kuu. In too much pain, she clutched her chest and gasped for breath. The great shock had caused paralysis in her heart. Then, Mok Jayanun kicked her chin with his foot. And he stepped on her chest as she fell backward. Thump. At a glance, it looked like he didn't care whether she lived or died, but soon, Holy Fire Priestess's gasping breath stabilized. It was because the stiffness had been relieved as Mok Jayanun injected energy into her heart along with a strong impact. Cough, cough. Tap tap tap. And thanks to him pressing her bleeding points, the bleeding from her arm stopped as well. It felt like he was inflicting injury and then treating it, but there was a strong sense that he had intervened right before she lost her life. If you kill me, what you want? Don't try to bargain with useless things. It's not useless. I don't think the Heaven and Earth Society leader needs you anymore. He told you to bring me, so how can you arbitrarily? Is it you that the Heaven and Earth Society leader needs, or is it your prophetic ability? All the more so. It's not because you lack the sacred orb that you can't make prophecies, right? At Mok Jayanun's sharp remark, the Holy Fire Priestess's eyes trembled like crazy. Does this bastard possess the memories of him as an incarnation of that being? Thump. Mok Jayanun pressed down even harder on her chest and said, "From the moment you lost your prophetic ability, you became a useless old hag." Although he had temporarily lost control of his body, he had been observing the entire situation, so he could easily infer her circumstances. And I don't think it's a good idea to provoke me any further. Whoosh! A tremendous murderous intent rose, causing the surroundings to tremble. Even Li Guang, who had surpassed the barrier, and Guyong Sao, the 8 poison snake staff of the Guyong clan, couldn't withstand Mok Jayanun's murderous intent. Naturally, there was no way the Holy Fire Priestess could endure it. Her eyes reddened, and even vapors rose from her crotch. The elderly woman couldn't bear the fear any longer and had wet herself. Come to think of it, you said you had a connection with the Tang clan's leader and entrusted your granddaughter to him, right? What a coincidence. It seems that the Tang clan's leader used something called the formless poison on my grandfather. Jay Guardian Jang is your real grandfather. It would be so delightful to tear off all the limbs of the Tang clan's leader and your granddaughter right in front of you. With those words, Mok Jayanun grinned eerily. Seeing this up close, the Holy Fire Priestess's face turned deathly pale. Mok Jayanun whispered into her ear. So don't test my patience and tell me. What was the real prophecy? Trembling at Mok Jayanun's words, which were full of oppressive force despite his whisper, Holy Fire Priestess finally opened her mouth. The true master of the sacred flame shall appear in this world. On the day when new wings sprout from his torn wounds, all shall worship him. Around the same time, in a hall filled with darkness. Crack. A faint sound of cracking can be heard. At that moment, the being shrouded in shadows, seated on the top seat of the platform, opened his eyes. The being who had opened his eyes looked at the wall where 6 candles were lit. In front of the last candle, there was a jade tablet with a red thread wrapped around it, and a crack had formed in its center. The shadowy being stretched out his hand. Pack. Then, the round jade tablet flew and landed in his hand. The being holding the jade tablet was about to examine it. Crack, crack, crack. The cracked jade tablet shattered, turning into powder. At the same time, the head of the shadowy being suddenly tilted back. The being slowly brought his tilted head back to its original position. Something sticky flowed down from the being's forehead. Then, the being's eyes sharpened, and crack, crack, crack. As his forehead split open, a third eye filled with bizarre red spots was revealed. The being who had opened his third eye crushed the armrest he was holding with his left hand, and crunch. As soon as that sound was heard, a voice echoed from the ceiling. My lord, what has happened? In response to that question, the being who had opened his third eye removed his hand from the shattered armrest and spoke, Summon all the deputy leaders of the first realm that you can gather. What? Why is that? At the cautious question, the being who had opened his third eye spoke in a meaningful tone, what we feared has occurred. Could it be? I felt his presence.